Okay, good evening everybody. I'm very pleased and honored to speak about syntax to an old student of mine. I hope it will be useful and joyful. The champion of syntax is Professor Chomsky, as it's well known to everybody. And before Chomsky, the Bloomfieldians, that is the linguists who were before him, said, leave syntax to the other guy. They focused on phonology and morphology and were not very sure about how to deal with syntax. Syntax is a science that studies the construction of sentences. I will limit myself to just this book, which I call Chomsky's Transformational Grammar from 1951 to 2021, because the bulk of Chomsky's work is enormous. He's almost a century old, and he wrote countless books and articles. I tried to start with the very first of his works, which he calls the Morphophonemics of Modern Hebrew, which was the title of his MA dissertation. It's a very complicated dissertation, almost mathematical, dealing with the morphology of Modern Hebrew. And the last one in 2021, which he calls Gengo Kenkyo, which he very kindly sent me a copy, which is roughly Japanese term for linguistic studies, because he believed that the Japanese have done a lot of work on linguistics. But in fact, what one should focus on is starting from his first monograph in 1957 called Syntactic Structures, in which he solved the problem faced by the previous linguists by giving a very neat and elegant mathematical equation to deal with the structure of sentence. The equation is sentence equals noun phrase plus verb phrase equals verb plus noun phrase equals article plus noun. And then you come to the lexicon. You could say, for instance, verb is hit, noun is boy and ball, and the article is D. And this would give you the sentence, the boy hit the ball. So it's a very neat mathematical equation that fixes the structure of the sentence. And then he moves to what he calls transformations. So if you have an input structure like NP1 followed by a V followed by NP2, you can transform it into NP2 ox, a verb, plus by NP1. So in the example we just gave, the boy hit the ball, it will become the ball was hit. The ball was hit by the boy. So we have, at least in the standard theory, at least three components, which are phrase structure rules, the ones I have just described, S equals NP, VP, etc. And the lexicon, that is, each word has got its idiosyncrasies or personality. For instance, verbs can be either intransitive, ditransitive, expecting you to give them a noun phrase before and a noun phrase after. So to hit needs a noun phrase before, that is the boy, and a noun phrase following, which is the ball. To give needs you to give it three noun phrases, like you say, the boy gave the ball to the girl, for instance, and so on. And then you have transformation. There are many transformations. I just mentioned the passive. You can have clefting, you have relativization. In fact, I should speak also about language and philosophy, language and psychology, because Chomsky is not just a linguist, he's also a philosopher and a psychologist. So the The last theory, that is this one I just mentioned, 2021, is more philosophical about why is language a characteristic of man, and you cannot find it in any other biological organism or animal, dog or ape or whatever. It's specific, it's amazing, it's still an unanswered question. So this is Genko, what he calls in the Japanese language, as I said, Gengo Kenkyu, so Keiko may know why. So no Shiro can learn language, and no Whitey, etc., etc. Now, this is the standard theory. These rules, phrase structure rules, lexical rules, and transformation rules. And of course, Chomsky does not stick to the syntax. He also wrote an excellent book called the SPE, the Sound Pattern of English, together with Maurice Halley, in which he suggests generative phonology. It's also based on transformations. They are not called transformation phonology, they are called assimilation rules, etc. So like in the word or the phrase human being, the N becomes an M. It's assimilated to the next consonant. Okay, so the transformations I can see in this book on page 34 are passive, dative, relativization, causative, reflexivization, nominalization like the love of God, which is ambiguous. Is it God that loves people or people who love God? Imperative, like help yourself. Topicalization, we trust in God, like in the Dar. Pied piping, this is a legend, I don't know if you know it. Do you want to know about it, the pied piping? It's just a story to tell the kids. It's said that one time the rats invaded the city, and people feared for their kids, and they invited the piper, a musician, and he played this music that the rats liked, and he moved to the rats followed the piper to the sea. Okay, finish the story.
They followed him.
They followed him and got drowned in the sea. Well, in syntax, the example you can give is you are talking about what. What are you talking about? Extraposition. A review of my book has just appeared. So please make a review of this book and give it 5 stars. A review has just appeared of my book. Okay, so after the standard theory, and you have also sentences like look alike at the superficial structure, because actually Chomsky's grammar or syntax is different from others, because he suggests that language has got 2 structures, a surface structure and a deep structure. So if we take the example of the pair of sentences, John is easy to please and John is eager to please, these 2 sentences seem to have the same structure, but in fact they have 2 different meanings, because they have 2 different deep structures. Okay, so after the standard theory and also his contributions to phonology came the theory of government and binding. And here he will move from a theory based on a set of rules to a theory based on principles. And he suggests that what he calls UG, or universal grammar, which is based on principles. He suggests 7 principles, which are X bar, government, binding, bounding, etc. The principles apply to all languages. If we take just the example of X bar, he would say that in every phrase has got a head that is the most important word in the phrase. So for instance, if you have the old man, so you have 3 words, the old and man, but the head is man, and then it's completed with the adjective old, and then specify the article. So you have this X bar schemata that he suggests, which is an alternative to phrase structure rules. So X bar is a principle that applies to all languages, according to him. So languages are one family, although they sound different, but according to him, they are cut to the same pattern in some very deep structure. So maybe they were just one language in the beginning. We have case also, which is well known to you, case nominative, case accusative, oblique dative. Binding theory is interesting because some people, when they speak, they tell you a story and they say John, Fred, and Max. One of them hit the other and the other shook hands with the other. You don't know who they are speaking about. So they should make the accurate binding correlations. If you have just one name, you say John came and I gave him something to eat, you know that him refers back to John. But if you say John, Fred, and William came and I gave him something, you don't know who you're talking about. Mm-hmm. In the pair of sentences, John thinks he is clever. Again, this he is ambiguous. John thinks he is clever. Maybe it refers to himself, or maybe it refers to another person. Now, if you start with the pronoun, he thinks John is clever, then no ambiguity. John and he are two different persons. So this is the principle of binding. If you are telling a story to a friend, make sure that you make the right binding. Because actually this binding theory is on the frontier between syntax and semantics. Just like if you gave I can't tell it a sentence, I can't call it a sentence. Like if I say, time flies. What does time flies? The time goes, you can speak. Time goes very quickly. So it is a sentence, time flies, subject, predicate. But it has other structures in which time flies is just a verb phrase. That is, suppose you are interested in the race made by two flies, and you time each one of them, which one is quicker, right? So it's a verb phrase. First one is a sentence. But you can also think about, can you think of a third meaning?
Yes.
Which is?
Time flies.
Uh-huh.
For example, the time where flies are
Out there.
insects.
Uh-huh.
There are many flies.
Time flies. Uh-huh.
It's the time for flies to be.
Yes. It's like an adjective, time flies, or spring flies. So it's an adjectival phrase. So it's a sentence. Now, syntax is a very interesting, has a very interesting way of dealing with semantics. And we know that semantics has got two branches, sense and reference. So if I say city, and I study this word as far as sense is concerned, you would say it's a set of houses and streets and cafes. Between every two cafes there is a cafe, etc., which people gaze at other people. But if you say Paris, it's an R expression. It's a referential expression. It refers to a specific place. So Chomsky, in his binding theory, gives us a way of dealing mathematically with the problems of reference. He says an anaphor is bound in its governing category, pronominal is free in its governing category, lexical NP must be free always. And here I must refer to one of Chomsky's students who wrote a very nice and elegant, he's called Ronald Langacker. The article is on pronominalization and the chain of command. It's an excellent work on semantics dealt with by syntactic means, right? Okay, so after a set of rules, as I said in his first theory, standard theory, phrase structure rules, lexic rules, transformation rules, now he's suggesting a parametric approach to language. That is, there are 7 principles that apply to all languages according to him. Whether we're speaking about Chinese, English, Arabic, they will apply to all of them according to him. Of course, you can challenge that, but I think he's right. Now, not all principles, although there are 7, are not enough to describe language, because the diversity of languages, the 6,000 languages of the world, and the dead language, the languages which are still in use, have differences. Well, he tries to fix those differences by suggesting parameters. One example of parameter is the SVO parameter. This applies to some languages, but not to others. So English is an SVO language, that's subject, verb, object, but Arabic is not. Arabic is a VSO language, verb, subject, object. Japanese would be something like...
it's also V.
This would be a transformation. Okay, so Japanese would be something, maybe object, subject, verb, something like that. Arabic is a VSO, like you say, Akala Muhammadun al-Khubza. Literally ate Muhammad the bread. Muhammad ate bread. And likewise, Hebrew, you say Elohim, Bara Elohim et Shamayim, created God the heavens. God created the heavens. This is from the Torah. So this would be not principles, but parameters that fix not only one language, but maybe a group of languages. And here you enter the realm of language typology. Well, I may mention some small potatoes here, but I won't. That is a discussion I had at the University of Berlin with some people. If you're interested, you can go through that. So don't forget that he's not just a syntactician, but also a semanticist, phonologist, logician, a philosopher, a psychologist. Yes, language typology. Considering the differences between languages, he suggests something about Arabic. I will read it for you. Okay. He said that as far as parameters, we said that at first he dealt with rules, okay? Phrase structure rules, transformation rules, but then he moved, starting from government and binding, he started dealing with principles. Every language should have these 7 principles, ex bar, government, binding, bounding, case, etc. But I've just explained or tried to explain. But then he moved to the parameters, that is, things that are specific to at least a group of languages, like say Arabic and Hebrew, if you like. But then he says that some languages have got agreement and inflectional features. Inflectional features means masculine, feminine, plural, etc., etc. He said that some languages, okay, I will quote him directly. This is in his minimalist program. Notes also that the language might allow both weak and strong inflection, hence weak and strong NP features. Arabic is a suggestive case, with SVO versus VSO correlating what you said, SVO versus VSO correlating with the richness of visible verb inflection. What does he mean? He means, for instance, if you say Al-awladu ja'u, this is a rich inflection, it's plural, masculine, etc. Al-awladu, if you start with the subject, but if you start with the verb, what does it give you? Ja'a, which is a weak feature. Well, in the minimalist program, it's more, let's say, philosophical. He puts a final thing I will read for you. Hopefully I will find it quickly in this minimalist program. What does he say? Yes. Oh, yes. Well, first he says, if we are satisfied that an apple falls to the ground because that is its natural place, there will be no serious science of mechanics. But concerning, I can't find it, but I will just say it to you from my mind. He says it's amazing that language is human specific. It's just a human child that can acquire language. In the whole organic world, it's a big question. So Chomsky from syntax moves to psychology and philosophy, and I hope this talk was of some benefit to you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yes.